I'm here at the IRS again. I want to talk to you about the IRS and income tax. I'm releasing this video on April 15th, or tax day. My goal is to eliminate the income tax for all of you and make April 15th a national holiday to remember the terrible atrocities that happen right here in this country at the hands of the IRS. Today I want to see what the Internal Revenue Code has to offer. One would think that this code will have some answers about who is required to file income tax returns. Let's see for ourselves. I talked to you before on how a person waives constitutional rights in order to file and pay an income tax. See my rant on the income tax and the Constitution. So can you be required to waive constitutional birthrights? I have some definitions here from the Law Dictionary. If you're going to waive something, here's the definition: to abandon, throw away, renounce, repudiate, surrender a claim, privilege, or right. To give up a right or claim voluntarily. In order for one to waive a right, he must do it knowingly and be possessed of the facts. Did the IRS tell you were waiving these rights? Of course not. Another definition is constitutional right. A right guaranteed to the citizens by the Constitution is so guaranteed as to prevent legislative interference therewith. That's pretty clear. They cannot make you waive your rights. Now let's look into the 1040 instruction booklet. In there is a Privacy Act. And here it is. It's called the Disclosure, Privacy Act, and Paperwork Reduction Act Notice. And I highlighted 4 paragraphs here. Let's take a look at the first paragraph. That'll tell us what the act is for. In about the middle there. Require that when we ask you for information, we must first tell you our legal right to ask for the information, why we are asking for it, and how it will be used. We must also tell you what could happen to you if we do not receive it, whether your response is voluntary, required to obtain a benefit, or mandatory under the law. Well, I'm interested in what their legal right to ask for the information is. So that's under the second paragraph I marked. Our legal right to ask for information is Internal Revenue Code 6001, Section 6001, 6011, and 6012A, and their regulations. They say that you must file a return or statement with us for any tax you are liable for. Your response is mandatory under these sections. Well, that sounds like you're required. But it says they say you must file a return. Well, who are they? They're not a person. They're talking about these 3 sections, 6001, 6011, 6012A. Maybe we should read those before we continue on. Internal Revenue Code, Section 6001. Here's part of it. Every person liable for any tax imposed by this title or for the collection thereof shall keep such records, render such statements, make such returns, and on it goes. But let's look at the first 3 words. Every person liable. Can you be made liable for tax if it starts off with every person liable? No. If you are liable, you should read this section. 2011. General rule. When required by regulations prescribed by, let's look at the first 2 words. We'll stop right here. When required. Does this require you to do something when it starts off with when required? It cannot. 6012A. This is a little more complex, but let's listen. I'll read it. Returns with respect to income taxes under subtitle A shall be made by the following. Every individual having for a taxable year a gross income which equals or exceeds the exemption amount, except that a return shall not be required of an individual. Wow. Does that require you? It's kind of confusing. You may think I don't have this typed in here right. That's the way it is worded. And then there's a big dash. And then there's a little I who is not married. And there's a little 2I. I don't have the whole section in here. It lists a whole group of people not required. Does that mean you're required? No, that's not how law works. Let's go back to this section here. Your response is mandatory under these sections. I like those sections. I say what response? Let's look at the third paragraph that I marked here. So if you're filing returns, you want to know the information you're giving them is held confidentially, because you don't want to share this with your friends, neighbors, or really anybody. And if we're in the middle there, we may disclose your tax information to the Department of Justice to enforce the tax laws, both civil and criminal, and to cities, states, the District of Columbia, U.S. Commonwealths, or possessions, and certain foreign governments. Who's left out? You are. If you want to get your own tax record, a lot of times the IRS will deny it. but anybody else can pretty much have it. Let's look at the fourth paragraph I marked. It says, please keep this notice with your records. It may help you if we ask you for additional information. If you have questions about the rules for filing and giving information, please call or visit the Internal Revenue Service office. I think that's important because that's what I did. I visited an office. I'll tell you about that in a little bit. First, I want to look at the title here. Disclosure Privacy Act and Paperwork Reduction Act Notice. How boring is that? I mean, even if you came across this page while looking through the book, you would just go to the next page. So the name always confused me, but I finally think I figured it out. If more people stopped on this page, read it, and a lot of people would then stop filing returns, there would be a big paperwork reduction. It was before April 15th and I had questions about the income tax still. So I went to the IRS. I told them about the meeting I went to, and that said I'm not required to file, and I'm thinking about that, but I wanted to talk to your people first, or something like that. I'm not recommending you do this. I'm just telling you what I did. They were very accommodating. They gave me 2 agents in a small room, and I told them about the meeting and wanted their opinion. The agents then proceeded to tell me what a great honor it is to pay my fair share, and told me all about the great things income tax pays for, such as food stamps. They did not mention the law at all. When they were done, I told them the similar story to what I just told you. The agents said, I see why you have a question, Mr. Hempfling, but we are going to get our own Internal Revenue Code. Well, I said, good. The agents left and came back about 40 minutes later. They sheepishly said, well, we cannot find our Internal Revenue Code. Now, this was the main IRS building, thousands of workers. Now, the way they said it made me think there was only one code in this building, and it was lost. It was also very obvious to me that these 2 agents never looked at the Privacy Act or the Internal Revenue Code before in their lives. That's sad to me. The meeting ended there without any questions being answered. Now, I've talked to you before about income tax being voluntary also. See my rant on is income tax voluntary. Senator Lou Rue, who was around when the first Income Tax Act was supposedly passed in 1913, and this is a quote from him. I guess you will have to go to jail if that is a result of not understanding the income tax law. I shall meet you there. We shall have a merry, merry time, for all of our friends will be there. It will be an intellectual center, for no one understands the income tax law except persons who do not have sufficient intelligence to understand the questions that arise under it. Wow. Well, I have to this day not found a clear requirement for me to file an income tax return. It's something most people believe is true without being able to see the proof. We know, for example, that to kill a vampire, you need to put a wooden stake through the heart. But where can we prove that? Are vampires even real? I say they are just as real as the requirement to file an income tax return. Happy April 15th. This is Steve-Hempfling, and this is one of my rants. Well, thanks for watching my rant. Free Enterprise Society exists to educate Americans about the importance of the U.S. Constitution. This is the formula, if you will, that made this country the greatest country the world has ever seen. We are not supposed to be like the rest of the world. You can get more information at my website. We're also funded by people like you. We have a membership. We can help you with some IRS problems. We also need donations and benefactors to continue this work. So if you want to abolish the income tax, check us out. If you have questions, feel free to contact me. But anyway, thanks for listening.